On a rainy American road, a young woman in a wheelchair waits. Cars pass, but no one stops, until a kind mechanic pulls over, changing both their lives forever. This is a story about compassion, courage, and how one simple act of kindness can rewrite fate. Let's get started. Rain fell in silver sheets over the quiet two-lane highway, blurring the headlights of passing cars into streaks of light. On the muddy roadside, Emily Hayes, a 19-year-old girl with long brown hair plastered to her face, sat helplessly in her wheelchair. Her jacket was soaked through, and the cold had begun to bite at her fingers. The chair's motor had died nearly an hour ago, and her phone battery had given out soon after. She tried waving for help each time a car passed, but not one slowed. Her lips trembled as she whispered to herself, "Please, someone." The distant hum of another vehicle approached, and Emily's hope wavered. It was probably just another driver who would look away. But then the engine slowed, the sound dipping low, until a truck's headlights stopped a few feet from her. A man stepped out, slamming the door against the wind. He was tall, broad-shouldered, around 25, with short brown hair and a worn denim jacket stained with grease. His eyes were kind, the sort that spoke more comfort than words could. He jogged toward her, shoes splashing in the puddles.
"Hey, are you okay?"
"What happened?" he asked, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "My wheel, it got stuck in the mud," Emily stammered, shivering. "Then the motor?" "It just stopped working." The young mechanic, Jake Miller, examined the damaged wheel and nodded thoughtfully. "All right," he said gently, "let's get you out of the rain first." Without hesitation, he grabbed the handles of her wheelchair and guided her under a nearby highway sign, giving them both some cover from the downpour. Rainwater trickled from his hair, but he didn't seem to notice. He crouched again, pulling out a small toolkit from the pocket of his jacket, the kind he carried everywhere. Emily watched as Jake worked quickly, his fingers moving with practiced ease despite the storm. "You're a mechanic?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly, not looking up. "Yeah, cars mostly. But I can figure this out." Sparks of hope flickered inside her as she saw his focus, every motion deliberate, calm, confident. "No one else stopped," she murmured. "I was starting to think I'd have to stay here all night." Jake looked up briefly, his eyes meeting hers. "Well, I couldn't just drive by." A few minutes later, he reconnected a wire and wiped the mud from the wheel. "Try it now," he said. Emily pressed the button, and the motor whirred softly to life. She gasped, covering her mouth. "It works." Jake chuckled and stood, brushing off his knees. "Told you it would." For the first time in hours, Emily laughed, a sound small but full of relief. The storm was still raging, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jake shrugged, just doing what anyone should. But deep down, both of them knew not everyone would have stopped that night. And in that moment, between rain and gratitude, something began to change in both their hearts. Jake offered Emily a ride back to town once the rain began to ease. He carefully lifted her wheelchair into the bed of his old blue pickup truck and helped her into the passenger seat, making sure she was comfortable before closing the door. The heater hummed softly, filling the cab with warmth. Emily looked at him, still in disbelief. "You didn't have to stop," she said again. Jake gave a small smile, keeping his eyes on the road. "Yeah, I did," he replied. "I couldn't leave someone stranded out there." The windshield wipers squeaked rhythmically as they drove through the wet, empty streets. When they reached his workshop on the edge of town, the rain had faded to a drizzle. The garage smelled of oil and steel, cluttered with old car parts and hanging tools. Jake rolled Emily's wheelchair inside and began inspecting it under bright white light. "This motor's been through a lot," he said, frowning slightly. "Who's been maintaining it?" Emily hesitated. "My dad used to, before he passed away last year." Jake paused, his expression softening. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded, trying to smile. "I've been figuring things out on my own since then." Jake got to work without another word. He cleaned the contacts, replaced a frayed wire, and tightened a few bolts. His hands were steady, but there was something gentle about the way he handled the wheelchair, like he understood what it meant to her. Emily watched him work, fascinated by his focus. "You really love fixing things, don't you?" she asked. He chuckled. Yeah, guess I just like seeing something broken start working again. Gives me hope, I suppose. That line made Emily smile faintly, her heart warming. After nearly an hour, Jake stood back and pressed the power switch. The motor purred smoothly, better than before. Emily gasped again, her eyes lighting up. It's perfect, she whispered. Jake grinned. You're good to go. But when she tried to thank him, he stopped her. You don't owe me anything, he said softly. Just promise me you'll keep believing that there's always someone out there willing to help. The next morning, Emily returned with a small paper bag of muffins from the local bakery. Jake laughed when he saw her roll in. You didn't have to, he said, but she insisted. You didn't have to stop either, she replied. They shared breakfast beside his workbench, laughter echoing through the quiet garage. What started as a simple act of kindness had become something neither of them expected, a connection built not from chance, but from compassion. From that day on, Emily often visited the workshop, and Jake always made time for her. The man who once fixed cars had somehow helped mend a broken spirit too, and Emily, the girl who thought no one would stop, found someone who did and changed both their lives forever.